And we are live on Thrive Network. I am Susana Kennedy, and I today am speaking to the wonderful Kundai. He is from TraceFit. He is a fitness expert, a nutrition expert, and he also coaches people. So I'm very, very excited to have him with us today.
We've taken on board the appeal of food, the deliciousness, the taste factor, and we've sort of concentrated it into these calorically dense processed foods, your junk food and all that kind of stuff. So it's taken the goodness of food, which is how it tastes, and it's packaged it into this unnatural format.
You know, you said that the food industry has really taken foods that we found delicious initially. Nature created them to be delicious so that we would want to eat them. And it's kind of twisted them and really made them into something that isn't good for us and intensified flavors. And one of the things I learned when I was going through my healing journey was to really tune into my body and listen to how food made me feel. And we are live on Thrive Network. I am Susana Kennedy, and I today am speaking to the wonderful Kundai. He is from TraceFit. He is a fitness expert, a nutrition expert, and he also coaches people. So I'm very, very excited to have him with us today. What is fitness without nutrition? They both go hand in hand. So how do we understand this relationship better? And how do we get a basic understanding of nutrition? Kundai is here to help us out. Kundai, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me once again. How are you doing?
Absolutely a pleasure. Always a pleasure. But let's kick it off. Kundai, let's get just a little bit of a basic understanding between the relationship between nutrition and health, because exercise is not enough. We need good nutrition as well. Can you just maybe just give a broad vision of what that really means?
Okay, so look at it this way. When you train, when you exercise, you're stimulating your body to change. You're stimulating change. But in order for that change to take place, you need the resources to catalyze that change. And that's where nutrition comes in. Think of it as building a new building. You've got your schematics, you've got your blueprints, you've got your plans, you've got your architects, and that's the training. Okay, and then the actual construction process, all the inputs, the concrete, the rebar, the foundation laying and all that kind of stuff, that's where your nutrition actually comes in. So you can't do one without the other. You can't just have a set of plans and then poof, there's a building. And on the same page, you can't have a bunch of building materials and then not really have a plan in which to implement them. So you need both training and nutrition. And what I've noticed is in the fitness industry, a lot of the emphasis is placed on exercise. But when all is said and done and people go home, their nutrition isn't really in check. And so all the results and the benefits that they could have achieved kind of fall to the wayside.
It's so brilliant that you say that, because how many of you out there have at some point or another really exercised hard, like you're doing all the exercise you're supposed to do, but you're not actually reaching the goals that you're wanting to achieve by doing all the exercise that you are wanting to do? How many of you, just give us a little indication in the comments below. Yes, I see some cross faces flying up in the comments below. But it's basically because you're not feeding your body what it needs in order to transform in the way that you want it to transform. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's precisely nailed on the head. Yeah.
So one of the questions, and guys, we are going to do questions, and Celeste is already coming in and saying nutrition labels on food products Are you able to explain some of those? She finds them so confusing. And Celeste, maybe I think let's dive in a little bit deeper first with Kundai and just get a basic understanding of nutrition, of what a healthier looking diet would look like, and then we can ask some questions, but I'll definitely keep that question on. And I see there's a lot of South Africans on today, so welcome from Durban, from Johannesburg, from Cape Town. Love having you all here today. So how do we begin to even approach nutrition? I think that's probably a good starting point.
So one of the big things that I've noticed about people approaching nutrition, especially with the diet label, is the term diet has gotten a really bad rap in recent times, where it's considered in the same realm as things like crash diets and these sort of one-size-fits-all diets like paleo and Atkins and all those kind of stuff, where it's a specific set of meal protocols that you have to follow in order to achieve a certain goal. Now, when it comes to nutrition, you take it as on an individual case-by-case basis. Just as we have our own set of fingerprints, each person has their individual nutritional requirements. And when we use the term diet, diet is just generally your eating behavior. It's not a fixed protocol. And it's definitely not one of those fad diets, one of those crash diets. Diets is just how you eat for the best version of you, for what you require as a human being and what you need to sustain yourself and optimize your health.
It's so true, because so many of us, we hear the word diet and we think deprivation. That's like the instant thing that pops into our minds. It's like diet. Oh no, deprivation. How many of you feel that way? Like when you hear the word diet, you go, oh no, what am I going to have to like take away
I'm on a diet.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on a diet.
Give me a little thumbs up if you guys are with me there.
The thing is, as soon as you put food in your mouth, that is your diet.
Yeah.
That's your diet. And the point is to ensure that that diet consists of good nutrition. And now when we talk about good nutrition, we're not talking about excessively healthy eating. And when I say excessively healthy eating, I mean that obsessive fixation on what is deemed healthy food, like constantly eating salads and boiled chicken and broccoli and all the brown starches, all that quote unquote healthy stuff. And when you go too deep into that, you actually start becoming disordered in your eating habits. And it's a condition known as orthorexia, where you become obsessed with the idea of just healthy eating in as far as what are assumed to be healthy foods. Now, good nutrition is a balance. It's a balance of nutrients and what you need as a person to ensure that you're healthy and happy and enjoying your food. Because at the end of the day, food is an intimate thing. It's meant to be enjoyed. That's why in nature, things like fruit are meant to be attractive. They have an attractive color. It tastes good. It's sweet. It's delicious, because the objective is to get that nutrition into you. And the reason we have things like taste buds and a sense of smell is to inspire us to actually reach out for those good foods. Now, the problem is with industry and the industrial revolution and agricultural revolution and food processing is that we've taken on board the appeal of food, the deliciousness, the taste factor, and we've sort of concentrated it into these calorically dense processed foods, your junk food and all that kind of stuff. So it's taken the goodness of food, which is how it tastes, and it's packaged it into this unnatural format which now we see a lot of problems developing with the refined carbohydrates and trans fats and all those kinds of unnatural aspects of the modern Western diet. And so now we're at a point where we're dealing with two divergent things, where food now tastes really good, but the idea and the reason behind food tasting good has sort of been twisted to fit the unnatural food products.
And
that's
it's
the
also,
problem.
they've also accentuated certain things. I love the way you're describing this because it's so true. It makes so much sense. But they've also taken certain flavors that we like and accentuated and intensified them to such an extent that actually our taste buds are so overstimulated most of the time.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And now we have the situation where food tastes better than it ever has, but it's also worse for us than it ever has. And so I believe in this this concept that I use with Trace Nutrition, which is my my diet plan, where it's called nutritional displacement. So the theory of displacement, if you guys don't know, is it's a scientific principle where a mass displaces an equal amount of water when it's placed in a body of water, replacing that volume and mass with something new. And so with nutritional displacement, what I do is I take food that is of similar value in terms of taste, while also retaining that nutritional quality and displacing the things that have now occupied our modern diet with things that are just going to taste as good, but have what you need in terms of nutrients and all that kind of stuff, all the good stuff. So we're taking it back to where food still tastes good, but is also good for you. And I think that's one way of winning the battle.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things, because there's a few things that you've touched on that I think are really, really valuable. For those of you who have just tuned in, you're watching Thrive Network. I'm Susana Kennedy, and I've got Kundai with me from TraceFit. He is a nutritional expert and coach, and we're chatting about nutrition today. What is good nutrition? And two of the things that have already just really stood out for me, that if you just take these two things away, guys, it can start shifting you, is changing your mindset around the word diet. Diet, by definition, the word is just what you are consuming, the food that you are eating. And we've got such a negative association with the word diet that we think that diet means deprivation or something that is negative. But all it is the food that you are eating is your diet. So just shifting that relationship, I think, could also benefit you, because I know the minute I say, okay, I'm going to diet now, in the past, I would go, my body would just want everything that I wasn't allowed, because I had that like thing in the back of my head. And then that was the one thing. And then also, there is no blanket statement of this is going to work for everyone. I'm sure there are certain food groups that are worse for most people and better for most people, but it's individual. You have to really look at yourself individually. And I think this is really, really important, because a lot of people will just attach themselves to some fad diet that is going on at the moment, and it can actually be very damaging, because something in that diet does not agree with your system. So please always treat yourselves with kindness and respect. And as individuals, really look at what what is good for you. Something I've been practicing now, Kundai, for the last sort of 5-6 years is my, in inverted commas, 70-80% good, and then 20-30% cheat. And when I say cheat is that, I'll have a chocolate croissant with a coffee, sometimes, or, whatever it is, because I think that if you are, like you were saying, like too strict and stringent on yourself, you're going to also just make yourself go mad. You have to enjoy a glass of wine from time to time, or a glass of champagne. And it's about balance. So that's the one thing that I do. And then the other thing that you said that also reminded me of something was, you said that the food industry has really taken foods that we found delicious initially. Nature created them to be delicious so that we would want to eat them. And it's kind of twisted them and really, made them into something that isn't good for us, and intensified flavors. And one of the things I learned when I was going through my healing journey was to really tune into my body and listen to how food made me feel. So I went through this process of discovering how food actually physically made me feel. So if I ate something and it made me feel heavy or bloated or, whatever it was, I would start steering away from that. And if I ate something and I felt good and vital and like I had the resources I needed, then I started steering towards those sorts of things. How do you work out somebody's nutritional diet so that it's the best nutritional diet for them?
Well, the first obvious step I would say is consult a dietitian, a registered dietitian, because these are people who have gone through the works. They've studied, they have a university degree and a medical background in nutrition, which allows them to administer diet and nutritional advice on a therapeutic level, rather than just kind of giving you a copy paste off a blog diet or something like that, or a one size fits all fad diet. These people are able to go into your genetic structure and look at what your cellular response is to certain foods and certain nutrients. They can also look at what deficiencies you're suffering, because nutritional deficiency is very common with our modern diets and processed foods, because the processing that takes place tends to strip away a lot of the natural nutrients that you would normally want to gain from eating. Big ones are things like vitamin D, zinc, B12, and all those kinds of things. So you kind of just need to consult an expert to begin with. And then another thing you can do is go through an elimination process. If you find that you are feeling not at ease with your eating, you can start looking at what you're eating and gradually eliminating certain aspects of your diet, of what's on your plate. For example, if you suspect that you might have a gluten sensitivity of some sort, you can eliminate gluten from your diet for a certain period and see if that makes any change. If it does, then you may have found the source of your problems. And you can go at it like that. You can eliminate certain aspects of your typical diet and see what changes transpire from that. And just doing research, consulting experts, and making sure that you know what the human body needs in general, because as much as it is an individual thing, there are certain things in general that your body needs, especially if we're dealing with micronutrients like your vitamins and your minerals. There's certain essentials that you cannot do without. Like I said, vitamin D is a big one, vitamin A as well. So you just need to look at those things and then look at your foods and see if your foods are inclusive of those nutrients. And if they're not, then you found a problem. Eliminate that problem by engaging with foods that have those things, or supplementing with different supplements that boost or optimize the availability in your body.
So there's two things there that I think are interesting and that we're going to talk about is that, you know, allergens, guys, the majority of dietitians in that will first take you off gluten. For instance, we've grown huge intolerance to gluten as a people, and it's because of the genetic modification that's happened to the different gluten items that this has happened. And they've actually there've been a couple of studies that have been done that have linked genetically modified food with some of our immune diseases that are going on, the immune deficiency diseases, because what happens is we're eating food that our body doesn't understand as food. And so our immune system gets a little bit more active. And if you're doing that on a constant basis, the likelihood of something triggering you into overactivity is more than if you're eating food that is actually nutritional and that your body is receiving as food. So that's just an interesting thing that I learned on my journey. And then also it is 1 minute to 11. Kundai, do you know what we do every morning at 11 a.m.?
What do you do at 11 a.m.?
So 11 a.m. in South Africa is the time that the most people in the world are awake. And, and so what we do is we howl 3 times to create a vibration of goodness and happiness and love. And then we say, thank you, more please. And we say, thank you, more please, to just show gratitude to everyone in the world that is putting good vibes out there, that is doing good work, that is making an effort to be a good vibrational being in this planet. And then also to say more please to attract more of what we want in our lives, because when we show gratitude, it is the quickest way of attracting more of what we want into our lives. So are you ready? Are you going to howl with me?
Let's do it.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, more, please. Amazing. Thank you. So I do that every morning, sometimes on my own, sometimes live on the show. But it's always an interesting little journey. So the first 3 things that generally dietitians will be concerned about is dairy, gluten, and sugar, and sometimes meat as well, because different meats. Like I've got a friend who went to this amazing doctor. He's completely changed his energy levels. He was suffering from chronic fatigue for years. And he always teased me because I'm a vegetarian. And he was like, no, you need protein and, you know, to have energy and everything. And the dietitian said to him, no more meat, like nothing, no more meat. You can eat fish from time to time, but I want you to cut every other meat out of your diet. And he was like, what? Are you crazy? I can't live without my meat. And it has changed. It's changed his energy levels, his everything. So you have to look at yourself as an individual, guys, and strip away past beliefs and be open to possibilities. I think that's my invitation. So the question was these nutrition labels on food products. Can you explain a little bit? Is there something to look out for? Is there something to be aware of with the nutrition labels on products?
Okay, so there's a few things, but one thing that I want people to understand is when you're counting calories or energy values on a nutrition label, it's not an exact science when you're looking at these things, because there are a lot of considerations when it comes to the final calorie count on a food item, how it was grown, what processing it went through, the age and ripeness of that food. So all these things kind of factor in, and they can significantly alter the final energy value of the food. So when I look at food labels and I look at the caloric value it's always taken with a pinch of salt. And it's something that you shouldn't have an over-reliance on when it comes to those foods. What I would say is there are a few resources and tools that you can use that give a broad sense of what certain food items have as their general caloric value. And rather look at those generic, there's a few websites out there that give you like, you can just punch in a certain food and then it'll give you like an average calorie rating of what that kind of food would consist of. And I think that's a better metric than just going with what's on the box or the packet. And then another thing that's quite a typical situation when it comes to food labels is when you're looking at certain macronutrients like fats and carbs, for example. Now, fat and carbs come in many different subcategories. Let's look at fat, for example. For fat, you've got your saturated fats, you've got your unsaturated fats, which is your monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. And then you have your trans fats. Now, a lot of people, especially in the past before carbs took over as the bad guy, they see fat and they immediately think, oh my God, it's bad for me. It's got so much fat. That's not the case. It really depends on what types of fats you actually have in them. And you want to have more of your healthy fats, your poly and monounsaturated fats. And what you also want to look out for is the label showing what trans fat value is in, because trans fats are the ones that are really bad. Those are the bad fats that you want to look out for. So I'm looking at this box of popcorn, which has total fat, and then it talks about of which is saturated, and it gives a value for that. Half of it is saturated fat. And saturated fat is okay to a certain level. After that, then you're having too much. But one thing that they don't actually mention on this box is trans fats. And when you get things like microwave popcorn, most brands do actually include trans fats, because that's just a more economically viable form of fat to include, and it helps with the whole popping process. And they're not mandated by any regulations to include that figure, that value. So you also have to understand the nature of the food industry and what is typically included. So the same thing goes with carbs. Now, carbs, what you want to watch out for is excess refined sugar. First of all, right off the bat, carbs are not bad for you. I know that it's a going thing to just try and eliminate carbs from the diet. It's a thing that everyone seems to want to do these days. It's like, oh my God, carbs, I'm going to get fat because I'm eating carbs. No, carbs have existed throughout our evolution as living beings. They're part and parcel of what we need for nutrition. It's just the nature in which we consume them and produce them today, which kind of makes them a little bit not ideal. And so when you're looking at carbs, you need to make sure that you're looking at the type of carbs that are going to give you a sustained energy release. And this is your low GI carbs, the ones with fiber as a component to them, which are going to release slowly into your bloodstream. Too many refined carbs is going to give you that insulin spike and just gradually lower your insulin sensitivity, which can lead to things like type 2 diabetes.
So what are some examples of healthy carbs?
Healthy carbs would be anything that comes with a fiber component. So your whole foods, your fruits, your veggies, anything with basically that has fiber in the food that you're eating. So it can be sweet, it can be sugary, but if it's coming with fiber, because what fiber does is it slows down the release of glucose through the gut-blood barrier. So it slows it down so that your insulin activity isn't so dramatic that it leads to a spike and, that high and low energy crash, which over time with chronic excess of refined carbs can start bringing on issues, metabolic syndrome issues like type 2 diabetes and obesity and all that kind of stuff. So you want to have fiber. Fiber is important for that reason.
Okay, so that's a really good one. If your carbs have fiber in, then they are better carbs.
Yes.
Okay. And Celeste is saying the Woolies brand of popcorn has trans fat on the nutritional information. Do most products have trans fat, but it's the level of trans fat that you have in the products?
Yeah, most processed snack foods do have a trans fat component. It's just the manufacturing standard. Trans fats are cheap. They're easy to use in bulk, and they also provide a flavor enhancement quality that makes the foods more appealing. So yeah, most of it is going to have trans fats, and big up to Woolies for actually including that figure, because a lot of the brands of snack foods and junk foods don't actually include their trans fat values. And so when you go in with full knowledge, at least you can know that, okay, I'm consuming X amount of trans fats, which at the end of the day, like we said, the 80-20 split is a good metric for you to know how healthy you're eating, how good your nutrition is, because at the end of the day, we still do want to enjoy some of the more less than ideal snacks, because they are good, they are delicious. But if you're taking care of your overall nutrition, you can allow yourself to have like the odd donut, the odd pizza, some cake and ice cream here and there. It's not going to knock you off the wagon. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You can enjoy some of the vices in life, let's put it that way. So just as long as you go in with full knowledge that, okay, there's some trans fats here that I'm dealing with, then you can make that judgment call rather than just not having that information, because obviously knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to Woolies for actually having some integrity.
Yeah, I think so as well, because the amount of information, guys, that is left off processed products is just crazy. So I always say, if you can eat fresh, that's your biggest bonus, and then if you are going to have processed products, then just be aware, try and make sure you know what is included in that product. Have a look at the label. If there's something you don't understand, it's probably not a good idea to eat it. So that's one of my kind of rules of thumb. Kundai, is there such a thing as, people say on a plate you should have X amount of carbs, X amount of protein, X amount of greens or salad or whatever? Is there such a thing?
There is, but it also depends on what you're going for, like what your overall goals are. With some of my clients, we have specific targets in terms of performance. Now we're going into the territory of performance enhancement eating. So if it's an athlete who wants to prep for a marathon or something like that, then I would have an emphasis on carb based, on a predominantly carb based meal, sort of the day before intense training or an actual race. And then as a recovery protocol after that, I would make it more, I'd shift to a more protein heavy kind of meal. But in a general sense, you just want balance. You want to be able to have a balance of all the macronutrients, and with a focus on including enough micronutrients that you're not deficient in any of them. So your vitamins and your minerals, and then your fats and your proteins and your carbs are going to be a question of quality am I having low GI carbs? Like we said, with fiber. Are my proteins complete? Do they contain all 90 essential amino acids? And are my fats healthy? Are they mono and polyunsaturated? Also, with fats, you want to make sure that you're loading up on omega-3s, because a lot of the fat that we consume is very high on the scale of omega-6, which is essential. But the funny thing about the human diet is you need like a balanced ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. And again, with our processed foods that we're mostly exposed to, it's very high on the scale with omega-6 and very low on omega-3. And that ratio disbalance, let me put it that way, it poses a lot of health problems in our modern nutrition. So you want to also have that in check. So it's a question of quality more than it is of quantity and ratios, unless you're going into territories where you've got specific health needs or specific performance goals that you want to achieve.
Okay, so PG Paradigm is saying, I'm really tired of Corona now. What can I eat to feel better?
Well, there's a lot of stuff you can eat to feel better in the short term, and I'm sure a lot of people have been doing that. But in the long term, like I've said, just having quality as a main prerogative in your nutrition, having foods that energize you. So I'll always say the micronutrients, making sure that you're eliminating deficiencies, and making sure that your macronutrients are of a high quality. So your greens, high fiber. It's always going to be a question of quality.
Yeah.
And you can find great tasting options with good quality. Like the going myth is that if you're going to eat healthy, you're going to have to sacrifice the enjoyment of your food, and that's just not the case. People just tend to overcorrect. We're a society where we overcorrect when we sense a problem in something that we've been doing as a habit. We go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and just overdo the correction. And so from eating too many refined carbs and trans fats, we go all the way to the end of the spectrum, and then we're like, carbs are evil and we low fat everything.
It's about balance.
It's about balance, and it's about quality.
Yeah, so, absolutely. How can people get hold of you, Kundai? What is the best way?
So the best way to get hold of me, you can follow me on Instagram at Kundai Murapa, or you can follow my fitness platform on Instagram as well, which is TraceFit Method. Those are the two platforms in which I promote my lifestyle things, my health and fitness and all that sorts of stuff. So,
and Kundai is great, guys, because he really does, like, on a daily basis, share health tips and little exercise inspirations. And so I really, really urge you all to follow him. He is absolutely fantastic. PG is saying, have a blessed day, guys. This session today was super cool. He really loved it. And I'm getting lots of thank you very much. Celeste is saying thank you. She has one last question, but we literally have 30 seconds to answer it. Intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting, look, it's good if you're okay with that, but it's not necessary. It's been sort of promoted as this grand fix-all scheme for diet, and it's another thing that it's on an individual basis. For me, sometimes it works really well, but having nutrition throughout the day is also really good for you because it keeps a constant metabolic process going, which is what you want. Fasting does have its benefits, but it's not like a silver bullet solution the way that it's being often described.
Okay, so I think, Celeste, to answer that question, individual again, you need to look at who you are individually. What are your requirements? What your activity level is? What your stress level is? What your body is kind of needing? And then you can really answer that question. It can't be a blanket statement. I know that it has worked for me at some points in my life, but I also know at other points in my life, my body has just needed nutrients. And so actually doing that to my system puts more strain on my system. And then whereas at the other times in my life, it's actually been really good for my digestive system to just have like a little bit of a break and reboot. So it really is individual. Guys, I'm going to have to end there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Lots of love to you all. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Kundai.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.